It was raining again. A soft, endless drizzle tapping against the windows like a whisper I couldn't quite interpret. The living room lights were off, but the TV screen flickered in the dark, casting brief shadows across the room. My wife sat, curled on the far side of the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her face illuminated for a second, then lost again. We hadn't spoken much all evening. Lately, silence had become our shared language. My phone buzzed against the wooden coffee table. A single message from her. Don't use the key. No greeting, no explanation, just that, as if she knew I was still holding on to it, physically, emotionally. She always did have a way of sensing me, even from across the silence of months, across the new lives we were pretending to live. I didn't look at my wife. I didn't want to see whether she noticed the way my fingers twitched before picking up the phone, whether her eyes lingered on my face, searching for signs of someone else inside me. Later, after she went to bed, I opened the drawer in my study and stared at it. The key. Small, silver, unremarkable, except for what it unlocked. I remember the day she pressed it into my hand like it was a secret, too fragile for words. Just in case, she'd whispered, her fingers brushing mine for a moment longer than they needed to. That was over a year ago. Back when we thought we could pull away, cleanly and quietly, before she married someone safer, before I stopped pretending I could forget her. I don't know why she messaged now, or why she told me not to use it. Maybe she finally realized how close I still was to doing just that. Or maybe it was a test. One last thread of power she could tug, just to see if I'd unravel. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of something dark and strong. The amber liquid caught the light from the street lamps outside, and for a second, it looked like fire in a bottle. I didn't drink it, just held it, letting the warmth of the glass burn against my skin. Upstairs, I heard the soft creak of our bed, my wife shifting in her sleep. Or maybe lying there awake, like I had been so many nights before, listening to her breathing and wondering if she too had a key hidden somewhere, some memory she refused to let go of. I could have ignored the message, deleted it even, but instead, I opened our old thread, scrolling back to the last time we spoke, 3 months ago. A voice note I never listened to. Her voice, waiting in digital purgatory. I played it now. Sometimes, she said softly, I wish you had lied better, or loved me worse. Then maybe I wouldn't still be thinking about you when I'm pretending to fall asleep next to him. Her voice cracked on the last word, and just like that, I was back there, in her apartment, in her arms, in that world we built on borrowed time and broken vows. She had been dangerous from the beginning. Not in the loud, obvious way, but in how she listened, how she knew exactly when to speak, and when to let silence fill the room. She saw through my practiced smiles, my hollow words. She saw the fractures, and instead of turning away, she pressed into them. I still remember the first time she laughed in my bed. Not a polite laugh, a full, raw one, like she forgot who we were supposed to be. I remember the way she once cried after we made love, whispering, I wish this wasn't wrong, as if saying it out loud might make it true. Now she was gone. Married. Hidden behind a life I wasn't invited into. And still, she left the key behind. I went back into the study and picked it up again, held it between my fingers like a relic. It was cold, heavier than I remembered. Funny how something so small could carry so much weight. I turned it over in my palm, as if there might be an answer carved into the metal. But all I found was the echo of her touch, the imprint of a time when nothing mattered but the way she looked at me like I was still worth saving. The rain hadn't stopped. I stood at the window, watching droplets race down the glass. The city, blurred behind them. Streetlights smeared into soft halos. I imagined her apartment just a few blocks away, still filled with the scent of her, jasmine, and something like warm vanilla. I imagined the way her curtains used to dance in the wind, the way her voice would hum along to whatever vinyl she had spinning. Behind me, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I felt present here. My wife and I existed beside each other now, like parallel lines. Close, never touching. She hadn't asked about the late nights or the quiet spells. She didn't need to. I glanced down at the key once more, its sharp edge digging gently into my palm. She told me not to use it. But some things are meant to be disobeyed. My coat was by the door. I didn't think. I moved. The way you do when you're already halfway through the fall, long before gravity pulls you completely. As I stepped into the rain, I told myself I was only going for a walk, just to clear my head, just to feel the night. But the key in my pocket said otherwise. The door creaked open with a reluctance that felt almost human. The air hit me first, still and stale, but unmistakably her. Jasmine, faint vanilla, a trace of warm wood and something older, like old paper and perfume soaked into the walls. I stepped inside, barely breathing. The apartment was empty, but not vacant. It held echoes, like it had been waiting for me, expecting me to break the promise she asked me to keep. Dust floated in the pale gray light filtering through the curtains. The windows were half open, the rain's whisper barely audible above, the creaking silence. It was the same place, but it felt like I was moving through a memory wearing a mask of the present. I closed the door behind me, and for a second, I hesitated, uncertain if I had crossed into her space or back into mine. My fingers ran along the edge of the kitchen counter, where she once leaned barefoot in an oversized sweater, sipping coffee and asking if I believed in fate. I didn't answer her then. I still don't know. The living room was as I remembered. Books stacked unevenly, a cracked leather chair she never replaced, a record player in the corner gathering dust like it had been left mid-song. I half expected music to start playing on its own. The ghost of her voice was thick in the silence. Wandered further in. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I touched it with the tips of my fingers, letting it swing open slowly. The bed was stripped bare. No sheets, no pillows, just the raw outline of absence. But I saw it clearly, the night she laid there, her back to me, and whispered, "I wish you were mine in a way that wouldn't ruin everything." I didn't answer her then either. I kissed her shoulder and said nothing. Some truths are too large to speak. On the dresser, a single item remained. Her perfume bottle. The same one she used to spritz behind her ears before we met. The same scent that had soaked into my shirts, into the passenger seat of my car, into me. I picked it up, uncapped it, and breathed in deeply. The ache it stirred was immediate and full-bodied. It was like inhaling a version of myself that no longer existed. In the top drawer, tucked under an old scarf, I found it. A note, folded twice. You never knew how to stay away. No signature, no date, just that. I sat down on the edge of the bed frame, the wood groaning under me. The walls felt closer now, like the apartment itself was watching. I read the note again, then again, the words digging into me like needles under the skin. She was right. I didn't know how to stay. Away, not from her, not from the idea of her. I walked through the rest of the apartment slowly, deliberately. Every step was a bruise forming beneath my ribs. The kitchen sink where she once washed strawberries, feeding them to me with fingers stained red. The hallway mirror where she caught my reflection behind her and smiled like she knew a secret. I didn't. The balcony where she cried that one morning, silent tears as the sunrise made gold out of her pain. Everything in here remembered her. Everything in me responded. And then, she was there. Standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her hair damp like she'd just come in from the rain. No expression, just eyes that seemed older than they used to be. "I told you not to come," she said. I didn't speak. I didn't trust my voice not to crack under the weight of her. "We had our ending," she said, taking a step closer. "You reopened it." She looked exactly the same, but she also didn't. Softer, maybe, or colder. I couldn't tell if I was seeing her or projecting her. My guilt wearing her face. "Are you real?" I asked, unsure if I wanted her to be. Her lips curved. Not a smile, something sadder. "Does it matter?" I reached for her, or thought. I did. My fingers barely moved. She stood perfectly still. "We burned it down for a reason," she said. "And now you're here, walking through the ashes like you expected to find something left." I closed my eyes. "I didn't come to find anything." "You came because you still want to believe it meant more than it did." "It meant everything." She looked down at the floor, a pause, a breath. "Then why did you leave when it mattered?" The question hung between us like smoke. There was no answer that would cleanse it. "I still think about you," I said, quieter than I meant to. She looked up again, eyes shining. "That's the problem." Silence wrapped around us. The sound of the rain growing louder, almost like it was inside the room now. The window pane trembled. "I'm married now," she said. "So are you." "I know." "Then why are you here?" I opened my mouth but said nothing. My throat ached. She stepped closer, barely an inch between us now. Her scent was exactly the same. Jasmine and the hint of something on fire. "You're not haunted by me," she whispered. "You're haunted by the version of yourself you were with me. That man doesn't exist anymore." Her fingers touched my chest, not tenderly, but like she was checking if I still had a pulse. "I miss who I was with you," I admitted, "but I don't know if I ever deserved her." She smiled then. Small, broken. "You didn't." And then she was gone. Just like that. The room was empty again. The record player clicked once, and I turned to look. Nothing moved. The needle hovered over the vinyl like a breath about to fall. I sat down on the floor, suddenly exhausted. The note still in my hand. The walls seemed to exhale. The apartment had exhaled me. Outside, the rain had stopped. But I was drenched in something else entirely. Grief, memory, the kind of hunger that doesn't fade even when you've starved it long enough to forget its name. I closed the door behind me, the key warm in my palm. I had come looking for closure, but all I found was myself, still lost inside her. The apartment was quiet now. Too quiet. No trace of perfume in the air, no ghost of her voice curling around the corners, just the sound of my own breath, ragged and shallow. I sat there for what felt like hours, waiting for her to come back, for something to move, but nothing did. When I stood up, the room looked different, stripped of whatever magic or memory I'd projected onto it. The colors were duller. The walls cracked in places I hadn't noticed. The corners carried a heaviness, not warmth. It wasn't haunted by her presence. It was decaying under the weight of my illusions. I turned in a slow circle, really seeing the place now. The dust, the peeling paint, the damp air that clung to everything. It had been abandoned longer than I wanted to believe. She hadn't just left it. She had moved on. Back in the hallway, I pulled out my phone, needing something to ground me. A single voicemail blinked back, from an unfamiliar number. I pressed play. A man's voice, low and efficient. "This is Kevin from Martin Property. Management. Just wanted to confirm that the former tenant of Unit 3B officially vacated 3 weeks ago. Building scheduled for demolition end of the month. We'll have the rest cleared by Friday. Let us know if you need access before then." I stood frozen, the words clicking into place one by one. 3 weeks. She hadn't lived here. The note. In the drawer. The scent. Her voice. All memory. I had walked into a shell and filled it with ghosts. Outside, the city moved on without me. The rain had stopped, but the sky still carried its weight, heavy and grey. I started walking with no clear direction, letting my feet make decisions my mind couldn't. My phone buzzed again. Wife. I answered without thinking. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Her voice, when it came, was soft, almost hollow. "I had a dream just now," she said. "You were with someone else." I didn't know how to respond. The words caught in my throat, thick with ash and silence. "I woke up," she continued, "and you weren't there. The bed was cold. I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her I had gone for a walk, that I couldn't sleep. I wanted to say I was fine, that we were fine. Instead, I said nothing. "You don't have to explain," she whispered. "I already know." And maybe she did. Maybe she'd known for months that part of me had been drifting away, anchored not in love, but in memory, in obsession. She just never asked, and I never confessed. We both chose quiet over confrontation. Familiarity over truth. "I'm coming home," I said, though I wasn't sure what home meant anymore. The line went dead. By the time I got back to our street, the early light had begun to crawl across the sky. Pale gold mixed with blue, casting long shadows that looked like they didn't belong to me. The house looked exactly as I left it, but it felt like I was stepping into someone else's life. She was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, her back to me. She didn't turn around. "I didn't sleep much," she said, voice calm. "There's some left if you want." I nodded, though she couldn't see it. I moved quietly, not out of guilt, though there was plenty of that, but because the space between us had become fragile. Like one wrong word would shatter what little we had left. She finally turned. Her face was tired, but not angry. There was no accusation, no tears, just a kind of knowing that made it worse. She looked at me for a long time, then simply said, "You didn't have to go to her. I already knew she still had you." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. "I dreamed it," she continued. "But it wasn't really a dream, was it?" I looked down at the table, the surface clean and empty, like us. "I'm sorry," I finally said. It was all I had. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Later, when she went upstairs, I sat alone in the living room, my hands folded, the silence pressing in, not just between us, but within me. For the first time, I wasn't angry or longing, just tired, deep in the bones kind of tired. I reached into my coat pocket. The key was still there, cold now, unwanted. I stood up and left the house again, this time with purpose. The sky was brighter, but the city felt muted, like the world was still holding its breath. I walked to the old bridge at the edge of the park, the one that arched over the shallow river, murky and slow-moving. I leaned over the railing and looked down. My fingers gripped the key one last time. It had never truly belonged to me, not the key, not her, not even the man I tried to be when I held them both. I let it go. The metal glinted once in the morning light, then disappeared beneath the surface without a sound. Some doors were meant to stay locked, but I was never good with instructions.